Okay, my name is Laura Seipel, and I'm one of the volunteer coordinators and a trainer here at Family Promise of Waukesha County, and I just wanted to thank you all for spending your Saturday morning here with us, learning more about the Family Promise program and about how you can participate successfully as a volunteer. So thank you so much for coming. Just a few little items. The bathrooms, you can go out that door and around the corner. They're right there. We're going to take a little bit of a break about halfway through. If you have any questions, certainly let me know. I might be covering some of that material farther on in the program, but I can let you know that as well. You have a few handouts in front of you. Most important is a volunteer application. On that application, it just gives us some ideas of things that what your strengths are and your interests are in volunteering with the program, and also you're signing for at least have a background check. All of our guests have a background check, and all of our volunteers that work with our guests, we do a quick background check on everybody as well. Also on that, you're signing a confidentiality agreement. That information that you talk over with guests remains confidential, and we're just getting some information about where you might be interested in participating in the program. You also have a little booklet that says Guide to Being a Volunteer Host. I'm not going to go through that page by page. That's going to be a reference for you to take home with you, and before you serve in the Family Promise program, it's a really nice little review booklet for you to go through that talks over a lot about what we're going to talk about today, about having a great experience in the Family Promise program. We're going to start now by just giving you a little bit about background information about what Family Promise of Waukesha is. And we're going to just kind of go through a slideshow, and here you see one of our Family Promise families, a photo of them on the slide. And next to that is the Family Promise of Waukesha mission statement, basically stating that we believe that every family deserves a home. But the fact of the matter is, even though Waukesha County is the wealthiest county in all of the state, we have plenty of families in our county that do not have a home. In fact, the latest statistics show that over 2.5 million children and their families in the United States will experience homelessness this year. So, here's my first shout out. What do you guys think causes homelessness? Any ideas what could cause homelessness?
Job loss.
Yes, jobs lost. People are working paycheck to paycheck a lot these days.
Illness?
Yes, illness. Medical bills, different types of illness. Any other ideas?
Mental health.
Yes, a lot of times people that struggle with mental health also struggle maintaining regular jobs.
Divorce.
Yes, family breakups tends to be, I think, one of the most common reasons why people find themselves in homelessness. And so there's lots of different reasons that someone might find themselves in a situation that they are without permanent shelter. And that's what they are. They're in a situation at this time without permanent shelter, and Family Promise hopes to help them move from that situation to a situation of sustainable independence. So, a little bit about the history of Family Promise in Waukesha County. So, if you found yourself without shelter or you were in need, where do you think might be one of the first places you turn? Any ideas about that? Well, what happened in Waukesha County is that one of the first places that people turn is local congregations and churches. We found that there's been some pastors in our community who have found that the knocks on their doors have been increasing over the past 10 years. And there's 3 pastors who are the founding pastors of Family Promise, Pastor Stephen Welch, Nancy Hawkins, and Tom Keats, who were running a fund called the Oconomowoc Urgent Needs Fund. And what it was basically congregations put some money together so that when those people came knocking on the doors, the different congregations could use their discretion to help those folks out and have a basis to help them. So what they were doing is they were providing rent assistance, maybe an overnight stay here and there, directing them to the Y to take showers, different things like that. But what they felt they were doing was just a Band-Aid effort. And they decided that they wanted to do some research to see what we could do as a community to move this problem beyond the Band-Aid effort. So what they found was a national program called Family Promise. Family Promise is a hospitality program created to help children and their families find their way out of homelessness with the help of a supporting community. After doing some research, these pastors decided to invite the community. They invited congregations and other community stakeholders together to a meeting, I think it was in 2012, to talk about the idea of bringing a Family Promise program to Waukesha County. They invited the national leaders into our community, and we sat down together in a room and decided whether or not this program might be something that we wanted to do here in Waukesha County. The response was overwhelming at those first meetings, and so a board was formed, and they raised funds, they recruited support, they found a location, a family center, they raised enough money to hire staff, and in November of 2014 they opened their doors to the first families, and we've been serving families ever since then. So, what is the national program of Family Promise? So Family Promise was started in the 80s. It was started by a woman named Karen Olson. She's the founder of the Family Promise program, and she was a person who did a lot of commuting on the subway from New Jersey into New York City every day, and she noticed a lot of times that she saw homeless families in the subway. And she started offering food, maybe her lunch one day. And then she decided that she and her family started providing sandwiches and providing food for folks in the subway. And then she started talking with these folks, and she's like, this is crazy. There's places that these people could be. And she turned to her congregation, and they decided to start housing some of these families in their congregation overnight. After they started doing this, other congregations were recruited, and she started what was called the Interfaith Hospitality Network. And basically it was area congregations opening up their doors at night to families who were without shelter, and then they started getting involved in helping them, not just being a shelter, but moving on to the next place. Currently, now there's over 200 different Family Promise affiliates across the country. There's over 160,000 volunteers doing what you guys are going to be doing soon in Waukesha County. Over 6,000 congregations serving 53,000 plus homeless families a year throughout the country with the Family Promise name. So this is not something new that we invented here in Waukesha County. We're following the blueprint from the Family Promise program. So, Family Promise of Waukesha County. Again, our mission statement is that every family deserves a home. And what we are is we are just basically a community responding to a need, and the need was homelessness in our community. What we're doing is that we are working together, we're collaborating as a community to link these families to the different resources that we already have. And we're doing this by providing cost-effective accommodations, meals, and different support services to bring those families from this point of homelessness to a point of sustainable independence. So Family Promise is not just a shelter, it's a program. And we accomplish the goals of the program with the use of 7 key components. So these 7 key components involve our host and supporting congregations, which house and feed our families through volunteers like yourselves. We have a family center where we have our director and our case manager. Each of the families has case management where they fill out a family plan to move from point A, fill in all the stepping stones to point B. We have transportation that moves our families back and forth between the family center and the congregations. Our case manager links the families to the existing community resources. We have a board of directors and our director who work on fundraising, because all of the money that is involved in Family Promise is donated through the kindness of the community. And then the hands and the feet of the program are you guys, the volunteers. So everybody always wants to know, oh yeah, who's in it? What churches are in it? So we have all the lists of the churches that are here up on the screen. I'm not going to read them all. But we currently have 13 hosting congregations. Those are congregations that actually house families within their church walls in the evenings. And we have support. We pair them with a support congregation, 1 or 2 support congregations, to help them provide volunteers, meals, funds to support the families that are in their church home for a week. So 13 partners between host and supporting congregations. Each of those partnerships hosts families in their church home 1 week at a time, 4 weeks per year. So that 13 times 4 weeks per year is 52 weeks. So we have all the weeks covered for the shelter for our families in our congregation partnerships. The Family Promise Center is the hub of the Family Promise program. That's where all the hard work gets done. That's where our director, David Tenick, who is right in our back in the second row here, hangs out with our case manager. That is, if you're an ice cream lover, you'll be very happy. It's located very conveniently between Culver's and Ledukes, right across from Kettle Moraine High School. That's where our case manager is, our director is. That's where our families go. That's where they go every day. That's where they meet with our case manager and develop a family plan. That's where we have our showers. The families take their showers there. That's where we have computers for them to look up jobs and housing. That's where there's a place for the kids to relax and play. That's where they do their laundry. That's basically their home and their permanent address when they're applying for jobs. We have transportation. This is our old van. We now, thanks to David and the board, we have a new 15-passenger van. A 15-passenger van works very excellently for our Family Promise because we have about 3 to 4 families in the program at a time, up to 14 individuals. The national program, so that's a great number of families for congregations to manage at one time. And also, our drivers do not have to have a chauffeur license if the passengers are less than 15. We have a trailer that was also purchased through donated funds that houses all of the cots that all the families sleep on at the churches. So the Family Promise provides all those cots and transports them to the church during their hosting week. Community resources are very important in Waukesha County. Our case manager works to link our families with different community resources. We don't try to reinvent the wheel. If there's somebody out there who does parenting classes or financial literacy classes, we link them to those folks so that they can fill in the stepping stones that they need to fill in the puzzle that they need to get to sustainable independence. So this is just a number of different area organizations that we work with, and our director works to build partnerships with the various local agencies in Waukesha County. So, who are our guests? As you can see on the slide, our guests are single mothers or fathers with children, 2-parent families with children, grandma or grandpa or a custodial adult with children. So what's the common denominator there? Children. So children is the greatest growing area of homelessness in our country. And the Nietzsche Family Promise is families, people with children. So we accept 3 to 4 families at a time, up to 14 individuals. Currently we are not accepting single men, and all of the families are screened to be appropriate to be in a program that is run primarily by volunteers. We have 2 paid staff members and a couple of extra drivers and weekend helpers, but mainly the volunteers are the ones who are hanging out with our families in the evenings. So we are trying to pair guests into the program that can be managed in that type of an environment. So currently we do not accept persons who have active substance abuse problems or serious untreated mental health issues or serious domestic violence situations. Now, lots of us take medication or have different things. As long as those situations are controlled and it's a safe thing, a lot of our guests do take medication, and a lot of our guests might have histories of mental health illness, but they are screened to be appropriate for our program, and our case manager does a great job of doing that. So, how does it work week by week? So I'm going to kind of run you through a typical hosting week. So on Sunday, we just hosted a few weeks ago, the Family Promise trailer will be dropped off at our church, usually very early in the morning, and then after our regular services, we'll have a group of volunteers that unloads the trailer, And we set up individual spaces for however many families that we have. We had 4 families that day, so we set up 4 of our classrooms to be the home for those guests for that week. So we did that in the morning, and everything was sort of set up with the cots for when the families arrived. The families were at the family center during the day, and then they came in the evening. So in the evening, they leave the family center about 5 o'clock, and they will be at our church anywhere between 5 and 5:30. So the van drops off the families, and they'll get settled into their rooms, and then at 6 o'clock they're offered a hot meal donated by volunteers from our church. And after dinner they pack a cold lunch to bring with them either to the family center, to their job, or to school, and they sleep. The next day, everybody gets up between 6:30 and has a quick kind of a grab and go self-serve breakfast that we set out for them in the morning. And then the families are either picked up by the van, or if they have a car and they have a job, they'll head off to work, and the kids will go to their school. We work really hard to try to keep the kids in the school that they're most familiar with. That's one of the nice parts of this program. And they go about their day. If they're at the family center, they're working on our computers to find jobs, to find housing. They're working with our case manager about what are the things that they need to do to complete those tasks. Some of our families have jobs, and they're working on saving money to get to that next step. And then early in the evening, they come back to the church, and we start the cycle again. Saturdays, the families spend at the family center, and if there's an opportunity for them to do something like go to the Y, they might do that, or they rest. I think a lot of times families rest on Saturdays. And the next Sunday morning, 6 o'clock, everybody's up, everything gets packed up, put back in the trailer, and the trailer brings all of the cots and everything to the next hosting church. And that's how the rotation continues. So this is usually the part where people ask me, isn't that really hard for those guests to move week to week from one church to the next? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. It's hard for them to do that. So why do we do it? Why do we use this rotation schedule? Well, one of the things, it's cost effective. We have many hands, makes light work. Lots of people are involved helping to keep that cost of shelter down to nothing, really, because the shelter is free and the food is free. But the second thing when we talk to the national programs is that they said that some affiliates will actually have a brick and mortar building that will be their shelter. And they've tried this method. And what they found was that families that were in a regular standard shelter, not moving from week to week, generally stayed in the program a lot longer. And what might be some of the reasons for that? Well, one of the reasons is if you are without shelter and all of a sudden you found yourself in a comfortable place that you can go to that's familiar, you might just want to rest and stay there a little bit longer. So the rotation schedule sort of is this kind of a planned dissonance where the families get tired. I mean, they're tired of it. It's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable enough that you kind of want to move on to the next place. You want to have your own home where you're staying and you're comfortable. So that's sort of an incentive to work really hard to find sustainable housing. But the other thing that national program talks about that we've seen here is that these guests are meeting every week a new group of volunteers, 30 to 40 different people at every congregation that they go to that somehow now have a stake in them. They've met them and they have a stake in them. And it's happened that we have some networking that goes along. We had one of our earlier guests, a gentleman who worked construction, was out of a job, and happened to be a volunteer at our church who was a construction manager, and they were hiring. And talked to our director, and through them they kind of got together, and that gentleman got a job. So it's basically this community networking together to uplift these families to help them move to the next time in their life. And the other thing is that the family center is that grounding force. I mean, they always have that family center. That's where that's sort of their home, and the congregations are sort of where they stay at night. So it works out pretty well. The last component of the Family Promise program is the volunteers, and that's what you guys came here for. The volunteers are the hands, I like to say the hands, the heart, and the feet of the program. remember that you're one of over nearly 200,000 different people doing this volunteering all throughout the country, every day of the year. So, what are the opportunities to volunteer in the Family Promise program? Well, I like to say, and I think because it's true, that there's something for everyone to do. Every age, every activity level, no matter how busy you are, there's something that you can do to participate in the Family Promise program. Every week, there's items that are needed for the program. Obviously, we need food. When I send out the list of the food that we need, literally within, I send it out on a computer on a Sign Up Genius, literally within 3 hours, all of the food is ready and it's donated. So that's a real easy thing for our really busy families who are volunteering in lots of different places. That's an easy way to do that. Of course, we always need all of the things. The entire program, Family Promise, is donation based, so we can always use donations of money as well and supplies. Another thing is we have so many people in our church that are excellent cooks. You can prepare a meal and drop it off. Or you can prepare a meal and stay and help serve the meal. So that's an easy way to participate. We have lots of people that maybe don't get home real early and they like to come just in the evening time. In our church we have a 7 to 9 shift, an evening shift, where you can just hang out, play games, read books, watch movies with our families. And then we have the overnight hosts. At every church there's 2 people, usually a man and a woman, that stay at the church overnight. You don't have to stay awake. You sleep. I like to tell everybody this is the easiest job. This is a job my husband loves, because you go there, the guests are generally in bed already, and you sleep, you get up the next morning. There you go, check, you did your volunteer work. So don't shy away from the overnight position, that's an easy one. Some of the churches have somebody come in and do breakfast on a Saturday. We always need teams to set up and take down cots. Or you can get more involved and you can help on the volunteer coordinator team at your church. A lot of our churches are always trying to build a team for the Family Promise program. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that have to happen, making sure the church is set up, making sure you have your dates, setting up the sign-up volunteer spot. So you can talk to the volunteer coordinator at your congregation and be part of that team. Another way is to participate on a higher level is to be a part of our board. We're always looking for people in the community that have an interest in working at a higher level in the program to be a part of our board. Okay, so here's another shout out. What do you think makes a good Family Promise volunteer? What do you think you need to have to be a great volunteer?
A smile.
Yeah, you need to be friendly. Other
Open.
ideas?
Open.
It needs to be open-minded. It really does help to be quite open-minded.
Compassion.
Yes, you want to have some compassion for somebody being in a situation. Those are all some great ideas. You know, we ask you to be kind, open-minded, friendly. We just ask you to be nice. That's the most important thing. But I would have to say that our case manager said the most important attribute is to be flexible. She is, our case manager, Erin, is working with the 4 families, and they all have schedules. Just like your family has changing schedules, our families have even more changing schedules. They have appointments for housing, they have appointments for jobs, they have appointments with different professionals that are helping them fill in skills that they need. So our case manager might send out a schedule and we're going to have 3 families for dinner, and then she might call me at 4 and say, guess what? You know, so-and-so's car broke down and this one's going here. We're only going to have 2 families for dinner. So just be flexible. She does a great job letting us know what's going on, but just be aware that changes do often happen. We just want you to have an open-minded and caring attitude and to just basically be nice. Remember, the families are in this program for a lot longer than the 2-hour shifts that we're going to be there. So we're looking for you guys to be sort of the light in the day that they might have had, that have been maybe a lot of shut doors and maybe a little bit difficult day. We just want you to be the nice light for them at the end of the day. This is sometimes also, I guess, the time where I should talk to you that it's not always unicorns and rainbows. So we have guests who are in one of the darkest times of their lives. They might show some signs of some depression. They might be tired. They might not be generally always in that position to be showing their gratitude at the time that you're there. So don't think that they aren't grateful, but they might not be always in a place where they're willing to say thank you at that time. I like to give the example of one of our first guests. She was generally in a very dark place, and her outward appearance was grumpy, and very rarely did anybody hear a thank you or a please or any sort of those kinds of niceties, because that's just not where she was at that point. And she was in our family center when our case manager was interviewing a new mom who was considering being part of our program. And the mom wanted to talk to one of the other guests in the program to get their viewpoint of what it was going to be like. And the only person there was this person who generally didn't have a lot of good things to say about anything. But she said, sure, why don't you talk to this woman and let's see what she has to say. And this woman sat down, and our case manager heard what she was saying and was moved to tears when she basically said, the people in this program will love and care for you like you're their own family member. And it will be the best thing that you ever did for yourself and your children. And our case manager said that's really all she needed to make it through the next 3 months of her job. So it might not be the gratitude right away, but it certainly is there. So, how can you help? In your booklet, there's some information about basically how to be nice, how to interact, just a few things, and you can read that over. It's on pages 5 and 7. But we have a little video that involves the family promised me that I think is really nice. It's from the viewpoint of actual volunteers and actual guests who have been in the program that just talks to you about what worked for them and how they had a successful experience. So I'll have you look at that now.
There's no way I can convey. I can't even put into words how it is that everybody was just there. It didn't matter who I was, what I've been through, why I was there. It mattered that I was Crystal and these were my children, and you wanted to be there for me. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just an amazing feeling to feel like you belong somewhere when you have nowhere to belong.
I'm on your side. It's your first time meeting us, and you would like to know about us, but it's maybe the 30th time we're getting asked the same question over and over, and there's some good days for us, there's some bad days for us, and just take that into consideration. Some of us, I'm a talker. I like to talk a lot, but maybe let the guest initiate. Maybe they want to offer information. Maybe they don't,
Basically, I would say be careful how you approach a person. You're a stranger, first of all, to them, and especially if they don't have family here, they might be a little skeptical. So I would think the best way to just introduce yourself and let them open up to you.
Sometimes they want to share their soul with you, but just to be a listener, not to be critical. Be helpful. Ask if there's anything you can do for them.
You're probably not their first experience. Many times the guests will make you feel comfortable. But yes, it's just a matter of relax. It's just some more people there. Visit with them. Let them take the lead. They'll tell you what they're going to tell you, and just that there is somebody there that cares about them.
Yeah, you avoid things like, where are you from, or where are you living, or what happened, or those kinds of things. Just always greet them with your name first, and that gives. And if sometimes they, and then you say, "And what's your name?" And how do you like to be addressed?
I was very shy, didn't know, what to expect from the volunteers. And I met a couple of volunteers when I first went to the church, and they were very, very warm, very caring, loving. They didn't pry. It was almost like a family. You just walked into a very loving place. They talked to you like you were a normal person. They didn't judge you. They didn't tell you how to parent. They didn't tell you what you need to do, what not to do. They gave you a lot of encouragement. A lot of encouragement.
That's the main key. Just listen. You don't necessarily have to say anything. Just listen. That's all guests need. Just to have a listening ear. Because that's one thing that I was afraid I wasn't going to have. And here I turn around and that's exactly what I got.
I feel like there's nothing wrong with generally coming up and speaking, hi, my name is Wap, and, whatever. And if you need anything, then I'm here, and leave it at that at the time. Because like I said, you already have a lot on you. You're already tired. You're carrying these bags. Then you have your kids. And we all know sometimes our kids can be so precious.
It's hard sometimes. Some of the facilities don't provide private rooms. In our church, we use partitions, and privacy is very limited. And everybody needs time to be able to go on their own, whether it's to deal with things themselves, just have quiet time. It's very important.
Sometimes the volunteers just got a little bit too much in your space a little bit, like sometimes you need to bag back and give people their own space because like I said, you have major mood swings. I know I did. Like you be happy one time, then you're sad, and it's like you don't want another person that you don't even know like all in your space, you want your own little space.
There are two different kinds of families, I think. Some of them that do leave almost immediately after dinner, and we cannot be offended by that. And then some of them, I had one family that they would have stayed up every night until we told them, you need to go to bed, because they love to play cards and interact. So I think you have to take their temperature by where they're at.
We absolutely give them as much space and as much privacy as they require. We always knock before you go into the room, even though some guests will say to you, yeah, just come on in whenever if you had a conversation about something, say, yeah, just come on in. Always knock. You never know.
Be sure that you give them their space. They have their room assigned to them. Knock on the door, don't walk in. And if they're not ready to talk, just leave them alone, let them be by themselves. Sometimes they like that, to just go off in their room and stay there for the evening. It doesn't mean that they don't want to talk to you. It's nothing against you, but we all have those times when we want to be alone.
There were times that it was difficult for her at the beginning, because when there were kids coming in, she would be scared that maybe they'd go to her school. And there were times at the beginning that she didn't even want to get out of the room, and until she gradually graduated from that stage. But at first it was difficult, because it's not something you might want to deal with when you're in middle school.
Everybody has unique parenting styles. If you don't agree with something, or something really bothers you, then you bring it to the coordinator, or the coordinator brings it to the director of the program, and you let them handle it and approach the guest. But confronting the guests, or the guests confronting the volunteers one-on-one, is not a good idea.
It's really good to have kids get involved, like Ashley's age, because they can actually sometimes help to draw the kids out, and they see other kids come and participate. And when you participate as a family, sometimes I key in on the young guys, and Ian will go and talk to them, because they don't necessarily want to talk to a female, or they don't think we can relate.
Sometimes kids will be kids. It is like, well, do you want to play cards a little bit longer? And, they'll be like, well, Mom, they said that I could play cards. No, I said you have to go to bed. So sometimes, it's good to So kind of like respect that, they have a set of rules with us before they have a set of rules with the program also.
Just be there. Just sit and talk with them a little bit. My kids are older, at the time. So it's different when it comes to older kids and little kids. Little kids, some of them might understand what's going on, but the older kids have more of a grasp on the reality that, hey, we don't have a home. And it's a very difficult thing for them to deal with. They've been through a lot.
The moms and the dads are the parents and not the IHN hosts or people that are working with the program.
You wanna be with them, help them, pay attention to them, but you're not their parent. And it's sometimes tough to understand what that parenting style is, and let that be the guide.
You gotta be sensitive, basically, and also not pry into sort of what their lives are about. If they want to talk about something, by all means, let them and listen, and be sort of sensitive to how you respond to what they say.
I think trying to just think of everybody who's in the space at the same time as being there together, rather than referring to them and us, that they're here, and separating that out, and just when you use someone's name instead of a label, or use a name instead of a pronoun, then they're people. And when you're talking to the guests, to talk to them about our space as their home, if they need something from the kitchen, if they need something from their room, giving that kind of direction, it becomes more inclusive, and it doesn't separate out that they at this moment are homeless.
The job thing, it's hard already because it's, jobs are very low right now, and then it's like, well, what are you doing, and when you think you're gonna get a job and all that, like, you can't really answer that question. Like, if I knew that, then I really probably wouldn't be here,
There are people who don't feel like they want to talk. Maybe they're just in too tough of a state. Maybe they're not people who love sharing their innermost emotions and feelings. And I think you don't push. You don't make believe or assume that you know more because you do have a home and have food. Because if you believe, again, that you're all the same, then you have to be able to respect those boundaries and not dig into someone's life who doesn't want to have their life dug into. And there can sometimes be a patronizing aspect to this.
When you go to volunteer, immediate things to come to mind are kindness, guest-centered, so what is it the guests want to do, and just unconditional love.
I'm a single mother, so pushing and prying about how come their father's not there, or why is he not there, is he ever going to be around, has he passed away, that's too much, that's too prying, and that's hard because as a single mother I think about it every day to begin with, and then to have you poking and prodding, and then it's hard because as a single mother you hear it every day from just about every person you meet, so it's hard, and that I would have to say would be an off-limits question, unless I offer it up.
Thinking before you speak, and given the situation, given the audience to whom you're speaking, it's not your next door neighbor where you can be a little bit more, relaxed. It's important to think about the families, the guests in your home. I mean, how would you behave with a guest in your home?
I would just say be sensitive about asking people why they came here. That was the main question that we were asked when we were in interfaith. But other than that, volunteers were very welcoming. We didn't have any bad experiences with anyone. I think they, to the best of their ability, they did the best that they could do to the best of their ability.
It changes your life. The IHN, that's the only thing I can say. It changes your life. Makes you more humble. It makes you, when you view somebody who's homeless, you view it differently once you've experienced it. I never used to view it the way I view it today. I used to look at homeless people and walking down the street and be like, well, why doesn't he just do something about it? It's not always like that. And I learned that because I went through this experience.
It was like climbing a mountain. You know, you're coming from the valley and you study climbing and climbing. It don't seem like you're going to ever get to the top. But it was the most rewarding thing that could have possibly happened to us when we did finally make it to the top.
It is the stepping stone from when you've hit rock bottom. It is, I'm gonna cry. You're at that place where you can't go anywhere else. You've hit rock bottom, and it's almost like you're in this dark place and somebody reaches out a hand. It is the most amazing feeling in the world. It is, you feel like a bad mother. You have 2 children who you can't feed. You don't have a home for them, and they depend on you for every second of every day. And Family Promise says, here, take my hand, it's gonna be okay. And it is okay.
Because I like helping children. Mostly. When I heard about it, I started signing up my parents instead of my parents signing up me.
Yes.
And when I went to church last Sunday, I signed up me, my dad, my mom, and we really enjoy helping other kids.
Yes, we do.
And to admire the families that come through, because I think the families that I've seen come through IHN sometimes give me a glimpse in how strong humanity can be, because I see them being strong people who love their children, who want to do better, and I think if I were in their place, could I do as well as they do?
It's a really nice video. Just kind of gives you a little sense of what is it like from the perspective of a volunteer, and what's it like from the perspective of one of our guests. So right now is a really good time for us to sort of take a break, but before we do that, I neglected to introduce our director, David Tenek. He's our fearless leader, so if you have any specific questions, you can ask either him or myself. We'll probably get back together when everybody can just take a break, 5 minutes or so, and then we'll start in and talking a little bit about some of the guidelines that are really important in the program. This is the part of the program where we just talk a little bit about what are the guidelines, what are the rules and the policies and the procedures of the program that just make it an easy experience for the guests and for volunteers. So we just have some basic guidelines that we follow so everybody knows a little bit more what to expect and how to help. We're looking for consistency. The families move from church to church every week, and we're looking for as much consistency in their schedule and the way things work as we can to make it more comfortable for them and just easier for volunteers to know what to do. So we're just going to go over some basic things that are consistent between all of the different congregations. So staffing. Every time that there's a volunteer slot, sometimes they're 1 to 2 hours, each church does it a little bit differently. Generally it's a mealtime slot, an evening slot, overnight slot. And at each of those volunteer time periods, we have 2 to 4 volunteers. We always have at least 2 volunteers there because we always want to make sure that we have enough help for our guests and on each shift, and generally not many more than 4. Our guests are coming in every night, and they're generally meeting a whole new group of volunteers, and that's a lot of happy, smiling faces to meet and all that information to take in every time. So it's not the whole church coming out and greeting them. Just a few people. It's very casual, make it comfortable, but always 2 people. We ask that when you come in that you wear a name tag. You come in and you sign in and you put a name tag on. Our guests are meeting so many different people all the time. They like to not just have to say, hey, Mr. or hey, Miss. They like to be able to get to know you, to know your name, and we like you to get to know them and know their names and use their names as well. Every time that you are volunteering for the Family Promise program, there will be a volunteer coordinator. I'm the coordinator at my church. Vicki in the back is a coordinator at her church. They're on call. If they're not there on site, they're on call. They'll give you information ahead of time before your shift. And if you have any questions or concerns, there's always somebody to call. So you call the volunteer coordinator if you have any questions. And in turn, the volunteer coordinator will, if they have any questions, can call staff. David and Aaron, staff members, they are on call 24/7 as well, and they do answer their phones. So there's always somebody there to help. You're not alone when you're out with volunteering in the program. I handed out a sheet for you, and it's called Guest Guidelines. So when the guests come into the program, they fill out an agreement that they're agreeing to these specific things, just basically specific ways to behave, be nice, and follow a program. Work to get yourself to the next point. And you can read those over yourself, but some of the basic things that you might want to remember is that when you get there, there will be a list of who's going to be there that evening. And those are the only people that are on the list are the people that are approved to be in the congregation during that time. They're not allowed to invite, a friend or a family member to come into the congregation when they're there. So you'll see a list of who's registered in the program when you get there. When the families get there, we really ask them to stay at the congregation to sort of make it easier for the volunteers and also give them some time to rest and to avoid a kind of a revolving door thing where the guests are in and out all evening. So when they come, you can expect the guests that are there to stay. We ask them to stay, not run out to Quick Trip, not run out to go grab something, because we just really want them to stay and rest. And there will be some exceptions. It'll be on the guest schedule. And if the guests have a planned meeting out, you'll know that. If they're coming late, you'll know that that will be on the guest schedule, and your volunteer coordinator will give you that information before you're there. So everybody in the Family Promise program is expected to be settled and into their rooms by 10 o'clock at night. So if a guest didn't arrive by 10 o'clock at night, something happened and they're not there, you still as a volunteer, if you're that overnight person, the doors are locked at 10 o'clock and you go to bed. If you were expecting a guest and they're not there, what would you do? You would call the volunteer coordinator. If somebody didn't show up, they'll work out finding out where that person may be, and if they don't show up after 10, they'll give the staff a shout out and the staff will take it from there. So doors lock at 10. If somebody's not there, let your volunteer coordinator know. The guidelines are basically showing how we can just be respectful to each other and how the guests are really working to move themselves out of the program. The most important thing to understand when we go over guest guidelines is that you as a general volunteer, you're there to be a host, to be friendly, to be nice. If there's any concerns, there's a volunteer coordinator on call. Their phone number is there at the church. And what we want you to do is not try to solve a problem, but just to call a volunteer coordinator and they'll give you some advice. So when you arrive at the church, there'll be the volunteer coordinator will let you know there's a place to sign in. We have a little sign-in sheet. We like to keep track of all the in-kind donations of time and service that our volunteers give. So we like you to sign in and let us know what you've been there and the hours that you've been there doing that. So every time you kind of come in, you're going to sign in. You're going to read over who's there, what is the schedule, just to familiarize yourself. And you're going to put a name tag on and greet the guests and perform the duties that your volunteer coordinator will let you know are available to you. Then after your shift, we like you to make a little entry into a logbook. We have a logbook. It's a little spiral notebook that's kept where you sign in and out. And it just basically lets our case manager know, how did things go? I mean, how did it go? Did you have a great time? Did people come when they said they were going to come? Was anybody sick? Or was anybody having a rough time? Basically, sort of how did it go? And we just want you to put into that some sort of factual information. We don't necessarily need an opinion from you about what happened. We really just want to know what happened. So an example would be like, so say one of the guests was out. We have, in each area, we have a designated smoking area. So an appropriate report in the logbook would be, you know, Susie was out smoking for an extended period of times, and we had to remind her to come in and watch her child. She was on the phone talking most of the time and didn't pay any attention to her child. So that might be nice to know, because our case manager might want to know that Susie was maybe not spending enough time with her child that night, or she had something on the phone that was really important to take care of, that maybe she needs to find some time for her to take care of those things when she's at the family center. We don't necessarily need you to write in there that Susie was smoking, and do you know how much expensive cigarettes are, and you know she has a nicer phone than I have, and you know we were sick of watching her kids all night. So do you see the difference between that? We just want you to know what happened. Because in fact we do want our guests to have a phone when they're there, because that's how they're finding jobs and that's how they're connecting to our case manager. And we do, when you're in the Family Promise program, it's not a great time to start a smoking cessation program. So a lot of people say, oh, isn't it expensive to smoke? Yeah, it is, but it's also a time of high stress for our guests, and that we're not asking them to quit smoking while they're in the program. So just jot us something down. Very often it's just everything went fine, the guests were here, we had a fun time, we played cards, something like that. So a little bit of information about a general idea of what to schedule. So the guests arrive between 5 and 5:30 generally, unless they have a job and it'll be on the schedule that they're going to arrive late. We have dinner, we try to have dinner at every congregation at 6 o'clock. We try to make that consistent for our families so that they kind of know when they can expect to have dinner. After dinner time, we generally relax with the guests. Sometimes they go right to their rooms like they showed in the video. Sometimes they hang out and play games and cards. But everybody is generally expected to be in their spaces by 10 o'clock. That doesn't mean that lights have to be out and everybody's asleep, but we just like everybody to have a break from each other, and our volunteers can sleep too at 10 o'clock. Generally the kids, especially on school nights, they'll be in their spaces by 9. All of the guests leave in the morning by 7 o'clock, because a lot of our volunteers have to get off and go to work, and they have lots of things to do at the Family Center if they're not already going off to work and our kids are going to school. Just remember that the schedules will change. If somebody didn't show up right at the time that they were supposed to be there, you can note that in the logbook and let the volunteer coordinator know. Meals. If you're somebody who wants to make a meal, we just remind you to make those meals kid-friendly. The kids are experiencing a lot of change in their life, so they're not really interested in a very lovely gourmet dinner with a food that they can't recognize. So we're just asking you to make very simple food items that, chicken with a vegetable and potatoes, something that kids might enjoy eating. And your volunteer coordinators will give you some ideas of what those food items might be. Our case manager will let us know if there's any food allergies, so you might get information from the volunteer coordinator. We have somebody who's allergic to cheese or tomatoes, and we just ask you if you're making a meal to try to let us know if it's in there, and we can sometimes provide something different, but if you can keep it out of there, we appreciate that as well. We encourage our guests to pack their lunches right away after dinner so that they're not doing that in the morning. Mornings are really busy. Each of the kitchens will be stocked with sandwich food, leftover food that the families can take with them so that they're eating when they're at the Family Center. And then in the morning, if you're an overnight host, we set out by 6:30, we set out some self-serve grab-and-go things like bagels, toaster waffles, toast, different things yogurts, things that they can take. They can eat with them very quickly and then be on their way. So keep it simple. But the last and most important thing is that we as volunteers do not offer food to the guest children. Parents are in charge of feeding the kids the foods that they want for them. We're not offering them snacks after dinner. Some parents don't want their kids to have snacks after dinner. So the parents with the children make sure that the parents are the ones that are making the choices about what the kids are eating. So basically, housekeeping. When the guests are in the program with us, we like to say that we work together as a team. At our church, we invite the guests to come in and we do dishes together. We show them where the food is in the kitchen for them to use. We give them an idea of where are all the items that they need and have them help themselves. There are some congregations that have these high-end kitchens that only a trained kitchen staff can be in, and so they might not be invited into the kitchen there. But we try to let them, your volunteer coordinator will let you know how much access the guests can have to help themselves to the things that they want to have. They might be tired of always asking for everything that they need, but there will be some sort of guidelines about in each space that you'll volunteer in about where guests can grab things on their own and where you might need to assist them. We ask the guests to keep the spaces tidy. If you see a lot of mess, you can just let your volunteer coordinator know that. And we try to provide hospitality to our guests, but we are not a concierge service. So the items that we have that for food are there for the guests to use, and if they have special requests, you can talk to the volunteer coordinator. But we generally aren't running out to get, vanilla hazelnut this week. We're trying to provide something comfortable and nutritional, but we ask the guests to help themselves as much as they can. Activities. So in the evening time, there's usually this time after dinner before everybody goes in their rooms. That is kind of the unknown time for the day, and every night it's different. Every night I volunteer at evening, it's different. Sometimes the guests are tired and they just want to be alone and they want to take their kids in their room and shut the door, and that's it for the rest of the night, and you won't see them again. Sometimes the guests want to play games. Sometimes they have homework to do. Sometimes they like to watch a movie. And each of our hosting congregations will have toys and different things out there for you to participate with the guests. We used to kind of plan activities and crafts, but a lot of times our guests just come in there, I'm sorry, but we're just tired, and they feel a little bit pressured to participate in a large group activity. Just like on the video, it said, just follow the lead of the guests. What do they want to do? Do they want privacy in their own room? Do they want to sit and play a game? Do they want maybe to have you kind of help read a couple books to their kids? Those are kind of great things to do. But if you're doing that evening time, you might want to also bring a book, because last week our guests were tired, they were in their rooms really early, and I needed something to do, so I brought a book. Donations. All donations to Family Promise guests go through the Family Promise staff. So you might be chatting with a guest and they say, oh, I was really, this pack and play crib that I have is breaking, I need a new one. And you'd have one that you were just going to get rid of. We ask you not to just hand it to them. Just let our staff know that you have one you want to donate to. They're working with them to make sure that they have all the things that they need. And if you have things that you want to offer to our guests, that's great. But just let David or Erin at the Family Center know, or let your volunteer coordinator know, and they'll work that out. We also ask that you don't, share your personal phone numbers and your email addresses and your Facebook stuff with our guests. We just want to make sure if you have an interest in having a continued relationship with a guest that you've maybe sparked an interest in, that kind of stuff goes through our the Family Center as well, just to make sure that those relationships are happy and healthy for both parties. Okay, this is a big, important one. Medications and medical emergencies. As a volunteer, you will never provide any type of medication or assistance to families in a medical way while you're volunteering in the program. Even over-the-counter medications, we do not provide any of that for the families. They should have the things that they need, and if they don't have them, what could you do? You could call the volunteer coordinator on call, and they will talk to staff and figure that out. So say somebody had a fever, mom forgot her children's Tylenol at the Family Center. You do not pull your children's Tylenol out of your purse and offer it to them. You call the volunteer coordinator, and they will work out what to have that need met. Most of our guests, our case managers working with them to have those basic things that they would need with them, locked in their rooms in a lock box. Any medications that our guests take or you take, please keep away from the common areas, or our guests are expected to keep their medications in a lockbox in their room. And if you have any medications, we certainly want to keep them out of the hands of children. All of the churches will have a first aid kit. Say somebody falls outside and they skin their knee. You can offer the first aid kit to mom or dad, and they can put a Band-Aid on the child as needed. We are asking you not to administer that medical care, and let mom and dad do that themselves. If there is an injury, there's an incident report. What could you do if there was an injury while you were there? You could call a volunteer coordinator on call, and they'll walk you through filling out an incident report as needed. When if staff needed to be called, obviously they would do that. If there was an emergency, what do you do in your own home if there's an emergency? You call 911. Same thing if there's something happened to a volunteer or a guest while you're there, you call 911, and then you would call the volunteer coordinator so that they could become involved and advise you from the next steps. They will talk to staff and figure out what would to happen. There's all these what-if situations, and all you need to know is that you would call 911 and call the volunteer coordinator and let them advise you. Okay? The one that I've highlighted here is do not drive guests. Would you please just run me up to Quick Trip so I can get some Tylenol? What would your answer be? No. Could you just run me up? I forgot that I needed to have this and it's just around the corner, or can I just run over here? Could you just take me up to urgent care? It's not an emergency, but I really want to go to urgent care. No, you would never drive a guest in your own car. You would call the volunteer coordinator, express that there's a concern, and they will work it out with staff. Another important one is that guests will always make their own decisions about their own health and their own children. So a guest might be very upset that their child has a fever and want to go to the emergency room. Maybe in your own home, you wouldn't take your child to the emergency room for that same reason. But that parent in the program will make their own choices, and if they want 911 called, you call 911, call the volunteer coordinator, and they will talk to staff. Again, always remember, any concern you have, you call the volunteer coordinator who will give you some advice on how to move forward. You don't need to solve any problems that the guests come up with. You just need to support and call the appropriate people to help. This is also an important one. Who here in this room is the best parent in our county? Raise your hand. I can't say it's me. We all try. We all try our best on a daily basis to be the best parent that we can be. But as you can imagine, our guests are in the program, number one, because they love their children and they want a better life for them. That's what we need to always remember. They've made a choice to be in this program that's not an easy program to be in. And they're working hard. And then to remember that parenting styles vary greatly. I might parent in a certain way and my neighbor parents very differently than I do. So you have to just be aware that a parent might not parent the same way that you do. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. When we are working with the kids in the program, we offer to assist and we talk to the parents. Oh, is it okay if I read a book to your kid? Is it okay if we play a game? Is it okay if we do this? I always ask the parents, is it okay if I play with your child? Because they're often really excited and happy for you to do that. They're tired. And they might not always be right down on the floor playing with their child. They might be sitting on the couch while their child is playing independently in the same room. We want the parents to have a visual kind of lock in on the kids as much as possible, but they have to go to the bathroom. They might want to go take a cigarette break. They might need to make a phone call. And we ask our guests to just say to you, would you mind just watching this person while I run and do this? And they've gotten really quite good about doing that. If you are ever in a room with one of our guest children, it's best practices if there's two of our volunteers there at all times. We really don't want to have one adult with a guest child in a room by themselves at any time. It's just not a safe practice for the child or for the volunteer. So try to work together in groups. We generally keep all of our kids together. We try to stay in the same area. We try to have our volunteers together with those kids. But of course, child abuse and neglect is not allowed anywhere in our world. And so if you have a concern that a parent is neglectful or abusing their child, we certainly need to know that. And what would you do if you had that concern? You would talk to the volunteer coordinator, they would bring it up to staff. If there was an emergent situation, what could you do? You would call 911, call the coordinator, and we would get those situations taken care of. But just because a parent is not right down on the floor with their child playing every moment doesn't mean that they're neglectful or abusive. Conduct and discipline. Let's just all be nice. Guests and volunteers are asked to treat each other with respect. In the video, it talked a lot about, let's talk about us all together. Let's have a we attitude rather than them and us. You know, I expect they deserve our respect just as much as I deserve their respect. In that turn, any kind of foul language or inappropriate behavior is not allowed. I mean, I expect people to treat me appropriately, and our guests are told to expect the same back. So if there's any issues like that you're uncomfortable with language or any kind of behavior, you certainly should call a volunteer coordinator and they would take care of that situation. Smoking, alcohol, and drugs. Like I said earlier, smoking is allowed in the program in designated areas. So your volunteer coordinator will show you the area that is allowed for smoking. Again, it's a stressful time. We don't need our guests going through a cessation program at this time. We expect them to get out there, have their cigarette, and come back in. We don't expect them to stay out all night having a cigarette. They do have kids that they are responsible for. So smoking is allowed for brief periods of time in the smoking area. We are a drug and alcohol-free program. If you have any concern that a guest or volunteer is under any type of influence, certainly what would you do? Call the volunteer coordinator on call, and they'll take care of that situation. We don't necessarily want you to say, hey, you're drinking, you're out. That's not your role. The staff would get involved in that kind of a situation if that would come up. Spiritual nurturing. So our families are tired, they're depressed, they're in a situation of homelessness. But just because they're homeless doesn't mean that they don't have their own set of beliefs and practices that are very dear to them. We are a program that utilizes faith-based institutions for shelter, but we are not a faith-based program. We welcome guests regardless of their religious affiliation. So what can you do? You can demonstrate your faith through action. You're there serving, you're there being the hands and feet, and a role model. Spiritual conversations, we expect you not to be evangelizing to our guests. If they engage with you in a conversation and they want to pray with you, I mean, that's fine, and that's something you're comfortable with. Certainly you can do that, but it's only by guest invitation. We are not asking them to do that. You know, certainly there are guests in your home, and when guests come to my home and we have dinner, I say grace. And they're invited, but not expected to participate. Does that make sense? Confidentiality is another really, really important one. Everyone here has signed a confidentiality agreement. Our guests are in a vulnerable position, okay? They might decide to tell you a lot of information about themselves, and they're trusting that that's a conversation between you and them. We don't expect you to talk about it at your coffee hour next time with your neighbors. We don't expect you to put it up on social media, checking in, I'm at Family Promise. Those things are not allowed. We ask the general volunteers not to take pictures of our guests. The volunteer coordinators know which families have a photo release, and they can work with staff to take appropriate photos that we might want or they might want, but we just ask you not to put anything up on social media. When you're there in a one-on-one position, and that's where it starts and that's where it ends. Should I bring my kids to volunteer? And you can see my big shining yes. Our families love it when your kids come. and play with their kids. It makes it more, if you have kids who want to come, it's great because the kids just feel like they're here together. It's not just, the focus doesn't end up on them as much. A lot of times our little kids have a lot of adult information, a lot of adult people really wanting to help them, and it's kind of intimidating. They really, really engage with the kids. I bring my teenage kids to come. Some of those little kids just love playing with my teenagers. It's just way more than they like playing with us as adults. So if you have kids to bring, we say yes, but we recommend that school-age children are the best. If you have a toddler or an infant, that's going to require a lot of your attention, we ask that you keep them at home because we do want you to be able to assist the guests. But school-age kids, it's really a lot of fun, and we have the most fun probably when we have some other kids involved in the mix. I have a handout here called Mommy, Why Don't They Have a Home? And it's a nice one for your kids who are in school. You kind of read over with them. It talks just about, a little bit about homelessness, a little bit about confidentiality, a little bit how we are more the same than we are different. And it's a good thing to go over with your kids. So if you're thinking about bringing kids, grab one of these to take with you before you leave. There have been instances where we might ask you to keep your kids at home, and this happened. This has happened for our kids. We had a family who went to my child's high school, and the case manager will know that they're in the same location that their high school is located, and she might say, hey, one of our guests is uncomfortable having that information known about them and doesn't really want to run into any of their friends. And so then the volunteer coordinator would just say, hey, if your kids go to these schools, please just keep them home this week. We have a child who's not comfortable with that. Or in the other case, she might ask the kids, and this has happened to us as well, and we had a family that went to my son's high school, and that family said, hey, no, I'd love to have kids from my school be there and hang out with me. And in fact, my son is friends with this kid still at school now. A friend he didn't have before and now does have. So that's kind of been a nice thing too. So just wait for advisement on some of those issues. So why should you do it? Why should you volunteer in the Family Promise Program? Well, there's just the basic ideas. It's a local responsibility. Let's take care of our neighbors. We can do this, Waukesha. We can do it. It's really easy. And it's a great way to live out, like I said before, live out your beliefs in service. It's so easy to donate the food and to donate the money but I would have to say that by getting in there and donating your time and just spending time one-on-one with families or just being available, it's really a great experience. I always learn so much more than I offer when I come. It's a great way to just get involved with more people in your own congregation, and it's a really great way to network with other people. We have a supporting congregation. I've gotten to know a lot of members from our supporting congregation that I'm really good friends with now. It's awesome for families. There's something for grandma, there's something for the kids. There's something for everybody to do, and you can do it together. My family, we take every Saturday. My family comes, we stay for dinner, we stay for evening, and my husband and I stay for overnight. And it's just a really nice time for us to all be together as a family doing something instead of sitting in front of the TV on a cold winter night. And it's super easy. We're giving you all these guidelines, telling you all these things that might happen or might not happen, but it's basically just going in and hanging out with a couple of people at your own church home. You don't have to drive down to Milwaukee. You don't have to take a trip to Africa to do service for someone in need. You can do it right in your own church home. And the other part is that we make a big difference in the lives of our guests. And we've been doing this since 2014, and I can tell you now from personal experience that we do make a big difference. I see people in the community that have been parts of our program who are working at some of the stores, and it's a great, hey, how are you? And we see them walking around the lake, and we see people moving from different levels of success. David's really good about talking about success. Sometimes we get disappointed because we have guests who are in a program who are just not in a place where they're willing to follow the guidelines and they move on. And how can that be success? And then David says, well, they know that there's a caring network for them that's available to them. That's success alone, to know that there's somebody out there to help them. And we have people that go out and find different levels of successful employment and different levels of successful housing and sustain it for different amounts of time. But each interaction that you have is just that one step forward for the families and for our community. And we just had a really neat, at our last volunteer coordinator meeting, the volunteer coordinators get together every month, and David was able to share a story about one of the family that was in the program a year ago, a young mom who has, I don't remember how many kids she had, but she had her youngest baby while she was in the program. So we had a newborn at our church. The baby was 4 days old when she was at our church. And that child is now a year old, and that mom, Vicki says, has 4 kids. She's in school pulling a 4.0, going for a social work degree because she wants to give back. So those are the kinds of amazing stories that come out of the few hours that you can volunteer at your congregation. So it does make a difference. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions? David and I are here. We can answer questions right now. Any questions about the program or how you can participate? David, so the length of times vary. We say 30 days to start, and then if they're working their program, moving forward.
Yeah, we start by telling them it's a 30-day program or a 60-day program, depending on where they're at. But our firm line really is 90 days. And we talk to them on day one, even the intake process before day one, of what it's going to look like, how we get you out of it. We love you. We want to help you all we can. We're going to give you a lot of resources. But how do we get you out of this program? That's what it's all about. The short answer is 90 days, and we're pretty firm about that because some families, a certain percentage, if we let them, they would stay for 2 years because of all you guys helping them out all the time. But it's all about moving them on and letting the next people in. So 90 days is the number. We stay away from those numbers with them, though. We'll deal with that on our end. And we do it on a case-by-case basis, but 3 months is plenty.
Are you able to take most of the people that apply, or do you have to turn people away?
We turn a number of people away this is a volunteer program. This is not a big facility with licensed staff. Yeah. So we're thinking about you guys as the volunteers when everyone comes through our door. There's chronic mental illness, there's chronic addiction issues, there's chronic behavior, there's violence, and then there's domestic abuse situation. We can't bring a mom in here who's some guy stalking her, so there are a lot of issues. So we turn away more than we'd like to.
Yeah. Where do you get those referrals from?
All over the place. It's really we get calls through the social network out there. We're on the 211 system for Waukesha and Milwaukee County, where people can call in and if they're looking for any kind of social service help. If they're asking for a place to stay, we're one of the names that comes up. But the referrals come from every which way. People know hey, I've got a sister and she's, her niece is, living upstairs with us the last 2 months and we need to get her out of here and move on. So, it comes from all over the place.
We have school social workers, lots of churches.
Yeah.
And a lot of, we have people now, we have how many churches, 30 some churches that are part of it. We have had referrals now from those churches because they know of the program and they come from the community. Anybody can refer somebody to our program. I had a lady on the phone about a year ago and she said, there's this woman here at Kohl's and she has nowhere to go and can we call Family Promise and what's the phone number? And she made that referral. So it's a community effort.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. On a practical level, how do you know where to volunteer? Must it be at a specific church, or do you have an expectation of once a month, twice a month, once every 6 months? How does that work?
Right. So if you're not affiliated with if you're affiliated with one of our hosting and supporting congregations as a volunteer, the easiest way to do that is to volunteer during the weeks that your your church is participating. And there's a volunteer coordinator who it's their job to get that information out to the congregation members about what the different opportunities are going to be coming up that week and 4 times per year. If you're not a member of a specific congregation, the best way to do that is to call the Family Center, and our case manager and David, our director, can direct you to somebody who's looking for help, and you can be a general volunteer. Because there is volunteer opportunities every day of the year at one of our congregations in the Waukesha County area. So you can do it as often or as little as you want to do it. And generally, we will give you those informations. It's oftentimes an online sign-up Genius. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It's often an online sign-up that you can go and this is the week, and here are the open slots. This is the description of what is needed, and you look at your schedule and see what fits in. And that volunteer coordinator will contact you about participating at whatever works for you. Does that answer your question?
So if I go home and I decide I want to do this, what would be my first step?
Yeah. So are you involved with any of the congregations that are hosting or supporting Family Promise? What congregation, do you participate in any
I don't,
congregation?
but I would be going
do.
with her.
Where do you live near?
In St. Catharines.
So it's St. Catharines, and I've never heard anything.
Yes, they are a supporting congregation for
Christ the King.
For Christ the King
In
Lutheran
Delafield.
Church in Delafield.
So come
So
to
you, so you can do that. But if you are not, the best place to start would be to talk to David, and he can get your information down, and he can reach out to you about who's hosting and give you all that information about what would be the best way for you to plug in on a regular basis. So I would talk to David today.
And in this case, I'd refer you right over to Vicki.
So just sort of, he can kind of say, well, these are the congregations that are coming up that are hosting, and these are the contact information they can get. If you're comfortable having them give your email information, what I do is I have a big list of people that are volunteers, and every time it's coming up, I send out a sign-up Genius on your email, and I'll say this is, and it has all the different slots that are available, and then you sign up. So you can get on everybody's list. You can, if you want that to see that every week, you can get on everybody's list and just see what the different opportunities are. Something every single day of the week. Any other questions? Well, again, I really thank you all for spending time here on Saturday. Certainly call the Family Center if you have any questions, and they're certainly willing to help direct you to the appropriate person to answer that question. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the Family Promise program.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.